talking to the part in women that's screaming, please help me. I desire to be desired by my husband.
There is a way to become addicted to your wife.
Here is Jay and Lori Pyatt from The Couple Cure with this week's question. How is a wife supposed to feel physically sexy to her husband? I've heard so much about the insides or what makes us beautiful and blah, blah, blah. None of that addresses the issue that I cannot dress up or do anything to impress my husband with my physical appearance. I've been dealing with this issue since 2009 and zero info on this subject. My sex language is desire, so having him love or appreciate who I am does nothing for me. Please help. He's stolen my femininity to the bones. First of all, we're going to take this in a few sections. I think the femininity thing is one thing. The physical desire is another thing. And then the looks piece is what I call it. That's a third thing. So we're going to be attacking those. I don't know if it's going to be one by one because we've written out a lot, but we will be covering all three of those areas.
Right. So the first thing I would say in this area is that while porn addicts watch stuff that has all kinds of language and words spoken to women, the problem is that in the context of speaking to Lori, my language for that was really limited because I assigned all of those words to unhealthy behavior, to unhealthy language, inappropriate language, all of that. And a lot of the men that I work with are like notoriously prude. They are unable to say those words of even simple desire. And they keep it away from their marriage, but it's something that they are okay with in the context of porn.
I think for Jay, and what I've seen with some guys that come through our program, they feel like desire is lust.
Right.
So if I show my wife that I desire her, then that's lusting after her.
Right.
So
all of those things fall into this lust category and therefore are bad. And so one thing that Lori helped me with was she gave me language that felt appropriate and good for her so that I was able to rebuild that context and that language in a healthy way between the two of us.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things I told him was, if you were to show me your desire, then that would really knock it out of the park for me. Because he had really taken a gash out of the way I felt about myself. I felt okay with how I looked before he and I started talking, after the big D-Day. And it was one of the first things he said to me right afterwards. And some of the things he said in the subsequent conversations, he made it very clear that he didn't desire me. Well, I, over time, gave him words to say, like, I need you to rebuild that back up, and this is how you can do it.
Right.
Whether actions or words and that sort of thing.
Not all of them were visual, right? A lot of them were how I felt toward her, how I wanted to be close to her, how I desired greater emotional intimacy between the two of us. So, I think there are other attributes or other things that draw men in. And if they're totally stuck on the visual, recognize that a lot of men who, in Hollywood and so on, are married to gorgeous women and cheat on them. It's not because of their looks. It's because there's something broken in the guy. The looks are not enough. That's not sustainable as we grow older. Mm-hmm. The guy needs to recognize he doesn't look like what he used to either. And he may not even be that good looking to begin with. And so if our wives can find a way to still find us attractive and desirable, then we can do that too. But it requires maturing beyond just I need just the visual or that part of me even to come to the surface.
And I think the Bible points us in that direction. There's a scripture in there. It's something, and I don't have this verbatim, so don't quote me on this, but it's something like, do not see as the world sees, judge with a righteous judgment.
Mhm.
You can be desired without it being about your looks. It can be more than the inner beauty and that sort of thing. It can be a physical thing, but you don't have to look like the typical thing that's seen as classically beautiful in our modern day society.
Right.
And that's the way it's supposed to be. You know, otherwise, only the supremely beautiful would never get married or that sort of thing.
Right.
Society confuses what is desirable all the time. Yet I also know that there's a part in some women screaming to be desired based on our looks. I think the reason for that, and I've addressed this at other times, I think the reason for that is our physical looks are like the only thing that we're allowed to have power in
Mhm.
as females. And, you know, as we grow older, it's like that's not enough anymore.
Mhm.
So they're two very separate things. Desire can be really raw and real and not based on the looks piece. And desire can be raw and real and not based on inner beauty.
Mhm.
You know, the things that we're typically told to focus on in the church. Just like Jay mentioned, you could be the most beautiful woman on earth and still be cheated on, and still have a guy looking at pretty women who pass by or becoming obsessed with somebody on TV or whatever. To me, that goes to the guy. It speaks to the guy.
Mhm.
I remember it wasn't the last D-Day. Oops, we're having a visitor. Come here, Bubs. It wasn't this last D-Day. It was the time before that, you know, Jay had told me, you don't look like that. So I started wearing things that were a little bit more form-fitting. I even tried something low cut, and my gosh, he did not know where to look. I'm like, time out. You know, you look at this stuff all the time, or you have looked at this stuff all the time online. Why won't you look at me? And he like literally was just like, I don't, and that speaks to what Jay had said earlier. Guys don't have the vocabulary for it. They don't know that it's okay to desire the wife like that. What was it that you said? Oh, they're notoriously prudish when it comes to the marriage. So I saw that then, and again later after the big D-Day, 14 years ago now, we really focused in on that issue. When it comes to what you said about he's stolen my femininity to my bones, I had to reclaim that for myself. I had to figure out, how did I want to be feminine? You know, I saw other women maybe in shows or people that I knew, and they showed up a certain way. And I thought, what fits me the best? And I was like, okay, I'm going to emulate that. I'm going to, until it was mine, until I felt like this is me. And I had to do that apart from Jay. I had to do that without his input, because I was like, you don't even know where to look. You know, we've tried this before. So I'm going to find out what fits me. I'm going to find out how I want to be. But the more I became more of myself, the less I cared about what he thought about me. You know, the less I cared about being desired just from how I looked or how I showed up. But like I've said, I've been there. It was one of the first things I brought up to my counselor after the big D-Day 14 years ago. And she said, I hope it's not based on looks. Because I was like, I'm not his type. I will never be his type. And she said, well, I hope it's not based on looks. When it's based on looks, she said, like, I have one set of clients, and she is just a doll. You can tell she is his arm candy. And she said, me as a counselor, I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, it works now, but what about in 10 years when you start showing signs of age? She said it's a very superficial relationship, that there's no depth to it.
Mhm.
And she said all of us get older, all of us, we lose our looks. And so she says it does have to be based on something else, something deeper than that.
Mhm.
Going back to what I said before about me dressing and feeling confident in myself, there was still a part of me that wanted to appeal to that side of Jay. I wanted him to heal that injury of all the stuff he had said kind of negatively about my looks. So we would go out on a date on Saturdays, and I would, dress up to the hilt, or, do my makeup super well and do my hair all up. And he still wasn't getting it. He still wasn't seeing the everything I was. He wasn't giving me really any credence there because I wasn't his type. Yet what healed me was other men and how they looked at me. Now, I don't want you to think that it takes all of that, because this was my journey with it. I would notice that Jay wasn't noticing me, but other men were. So I was like, okay, I still have a little bit of that left. And then we would get home, and maybe I'd go to the store afterwards, still dressed like that, still made up like that. And then I would get like really lustful looks from guys. And I was like, okay, that's not what I want. That's not what I'm about. Like, I don't, if that's what I am searching for in Jay, if that's the piece of him that I want to trigger, I'm not interested in that. And if that's what I'm triggering in other men, I'm not interested in that. Then I would go out like with just a smile on, minimal makeup, if anything, dressed in my normal outfits, and just go to the store. But I was happy. And people actually were attracted to that. I got more conversations that way, I got the decent side of people that way. People wanted to talk to me. People wanted to smile back. People noticed me in a way that wasn't lustful. So it's a whole journey that I can take you through if you want. So reach out if you really struggle with this. Reach out. It's a multi-layered, multi-healing thing. Many different injuries to heal and to come into your own like that, to where it doesn't hurt so much. We also talked a little bit about this in the end part of 516. So look at the trigger warning part of 516. Look at the one where I'm in it by myself. It's a couple of episodes back, but look for the trigger warning piece of it, because I talk about the looks piece in that. Ultimately, it comes down to novelty for the guy. They get bored really easy. I even noticed it with Jay, that there would be some times where I would be trying a new makeup technique and I didn't think it looked good at all, because it just wasn't a technique that worked well on me. He'd get home from work and he'd be like, oh, that looks good. And you could tell it struck him as new and he interpreted it as good. But to me, what that told me was, number one, it didn't even have to look the way I thought it did, but also it has more to do with boredom than with looks, that maybe changing it up, and that helps us too. It keeps us creative. I have always seen makeup and hair as art. So changing things up can keep our creative side going as well. But again, it's not a matter of looks, it's a matter of boredom on his part.
Going back to what Lori was saying about the need for novelty for guys being bored, again, that's a place for guys to grow up a little bit. That not every experience is going to be a novelty. Novelty being doing her hair different, wearing a type of clothing that she normally doesn't do, or something along those lines. That's awesome when it happens, but that's also, again, something the guy needs to grow past. And the reality behind it is there is a lack of maturity on his part to say, this is the person I chose, and I'm going to be invested here rather than invested in the novelty and I need flashing lights and everything to, make this work for me. It's a part of the growth on his part.
And I know that, some people would watch this going, you're supporting women appealing to that side of men. Not really. I'm in support of a woman finding what she feels comfortable with, what makes her feel confident, and hopefully he will respond to that confidence. But I'm also talking to the part in women that's screaming for a different take on this. Please help me. I desire to be desired by my husband, whatever that takes, and we are wounded in that looks piece area when we're compared to other women.
Right.
So I'm wanting to allow her to stand on her own and become somebody without comparison to him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for me, I think that for the guy, it needs to be a changing conversation between that desire and lust, because bringing lust into the marriage is unhealthy, but bringing desire into the marriage is, biblical, that we should desire our wives and do that in a way that is healthy versus all of the stuff that has gotten twisted around in our culture and through porn.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that helped Jay, because he mentioned I gave him words or phrases or reframed it in a different way. And one of the things I told him was, you're allowed to desire me with a desire that borders on lust.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was really eye-opening for him.
So, guys, in all of this, there is a way to become addicted to your wife. And that is something that I help guys with when I'm working with them. Again, it's beyond the novelty. It's beyond the, I need certain things a certain way. It is allowing us to connect with someone at a much deeper level than the surface of hair and makeup, which, again, there's a place for that, but we have got to connect deeper than that, or we are basically saying, I want to stay immature and unhealthy and expect you to join me in it.
Mm-hmm. One of the big things that my therapist said was it has to do with generalized sexuality versus specialized sexuality. Generalized is like a fetish. It's a look. It's a hairdo. It's a type of person.
Mm-hmm.
It's a subsection of females that walk the earth that he's attracted to. And if you don't fit inside of that, then he is trying to generalize his own sexuality. Specialized sexuality is more mature. It's more the way God intended. It's a person.
Mm-hmm.
She's cool. We have so much together.
Right.
It's looking at the life we've built together and the memories we share and how cool she is, how she gets me. It's the connection,
right,
built over, time that dominates the generalized part.
Mm-hmm.
Where Jay can look at a woman and go, all she's got is her looks. She doesn't have the history we have. She doesn't have the memories that Lori shares with me. She doesn't get me like Lori does.
Yeah. Just going back to what Lori was talking about with generalized versus specialized. Guys, I can't convey this in a way that you're actually going to believe it, but at some point in your relationship, when you are more deeply known by your wife because you finally brought everything out in the open, you're trusting her with your vulnerability, you're taking ownership of all the stupid stuff that you've done, and she still stays with you, and she has a level of acceptance and knowledge of who you are, that blows physical beauty out of the water, because you're getting what you want at a deep level, which is to be known and accepted in a way that just having somebody smile at you won't ever do.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Right. Well, that's all we got. So yeah, this is a big one. I know a lot of women are hurting that way.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for asking that question. I don't think she left her name. She did not leave a name or handle. So thank you for submitting that question. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the next one.
Bye, everybody.